Can you hear me? I can't hear you.
Hear you.
Oh, I can hear you. Jesus Christ,
AirPods.
mighty.
Solve all problems.
I'm going to kill you. All right. All right, I'm going live now.
So you do not use the PDF, right? I have a PDF and a PowerPoint.
Yeah, upload it.
Do I sound okay? Yeah, I got, what is it? I don't know what upload means. I have it right here.
Go to the top. Go to the top. There you see a little plus sign next to cameras. Present slides.
Where?
Slides.
Okay, I see slides.
Upper left-hand corner, there's a little plus.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Upload that.
Present slides?
Yes.
God.
I'll wait.
It's converting file.
Okay. So Big Marker is uploading it. There we go.
How do I click through?
Go to the bottom and just hover.
Oh,
yes. Okay, we're going live in 10 seconds.
Can you see me? Should I move my like, would this be a better?
No, this is fine. I can't even deal with that right now. Hold on.
Okay.
All right. I got to share in the group. Hello, if anyone is in the room. Oops. We are sussing out some technical difficulties, but we are nearly there. I'm going to go live in the Alchemy Business Accelerator group. Hang tight for just 1 second.
Mm-hmm.
I could simplify your financial life. Okay, we're going live. John Conti, you are live in the Alchemy Business Accelerator group. Hello, whoever is here, if you wouldn't mind just saying hi in the chat. We would love to know that you're here and participating. I have John Conti here today of Oliver Capital Management. We are just getting everything set. We're excited. It's going to happen. So I just want to give a quick shout out to John, thanking him for doing this for us today. This is going to be really awesome. He's a friend of mine. He's in a networking group, a local networking group here in Concord, Mass. And I am going to be taking Q&A at the end of this presentation. So if you guys have questions, he's going to be happy to answer all of your burning financial questions. Right, John?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's going to be awesome. So I will be keeping my eye on Facebook and in the webinar space here. And for those of you who are here in the webinar room, please feel free to check out the Alchemy Business Accelerator group in Facebook. That's a private group where I pour a lot of value and ongoing webinars and tutorials and helping to fuel some accountability to help small business owners pivot and thrive. So I'm going to introduce John here. He's been an advocate for new families and small business owners trying to navigate the landscape of personal finance. He's had over 1,000 hours of financial services education, and you know, you're certified in lots of things, right? Certified financial planner, helps clients save money based on their unique vision for the future. So John is very approachable, personable, and a great person to sit around and have beers with and talk about money. So he's here to tell us all about it. And so John, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make myself disappear, and I'm going to mute myself. I'm going to be keeping my eye on the chat, and I'm going to let you take it away. Sure.
Thank you very much. Great person to have beers with and talk about money. I like that. That should be my new tagline. So, so I am John. I live in Concord, Massachusetts, where my office is. I've been doing this for quite some time. So I have, Tara mentioned, I have about 1,000 hours of study time, probably more at this point. But I really work with a lot of young families in the area and throughout the Northeast, and help people just determine really what their vision is for the future with regard to their money, and put together a strategy to get there. So I started in 2002. This is the only job I've ever had. So never done anything else but work in the financial space with individual clients. Built my practice in New York City and moved up here almost 2.5 years ago now. That's where my wife's from. So relocated up here to have some grass, and thankfully, based on current situations, it's played out pretty well. I have a bunch of designations. I am a fiduciary. Fiduciary is one of the biggest kind of buzzwords that people are seeing now. And really what it means is that I'm legally obligated to do what's in a client's best interest, which is kind of crazy to think about, that anyone off the street isn't legally obligated to do that. But it's a thing. And so whenever you work with anyone, whether it's me or anybody else, you want to make sure that they have that title of a fiduciary. It's very important. Had the same cell phone number for 20 years, which means I'm just always easy to get in touch with. And I have 2 little ones. So my wife, Emily, on the right. She is keeps the family, she's the brains of the operation. Yeah, keeps us going. My son, Oliver, who I named the company after, he is 5 years old, and that's him on the left. As you can see by the picture in the invite, I have since shaved, and or you can see by now on the camera, I've since shaved and got a haircut. That was a little while back, but working from home, it's about a weekday. And Caroline is 2, and she is on the right, and she's a little nightmare, but she's just cute, so we give her a pass. So I wanted to start with just at the beginning. So what is the difference between a stock and a bond? A lot of times I think one of the biggest mistakes I made was assuming that everyone knew the answers to very simple questions. So today I really just wanted to start there, and then see how that progresses. But I met with a lot of people, and you're getting into it and talking about different portfolios and different strategies. And I've backed up and said, wait a second, do you know the difference between a stock and a bond? And have been pleasantly surprised, I would say, by asking that question, surprised pleasantly that it gave me the ability to go back and say, okay, well, let's start from the beginning and realize the difference between the two. So I think the easiest way, I really like just telling stories. So I'm a storyteller, I would say, and in this business, a lot of times it's just getting people to understand somewhat complex ideas. We're just telling a simple story. So one of my favorite ones is about my buddy Tim from college and Tim's journey to Disney World. So, and Tim doesn't know that I'm doing this. So I'm kind of hoping he joins. I told him to join, but I didn't tell him why. So we'll see. We'll see if he joins it. But so Tim went to Disney World with his 2 daughters, and he came back and we were chatting about it, and he's telling me about the trip, and I was like, oh, that sounds absolutely horrible. That whole trip sounds absolutely horrible. And he's like, yeah, but he always dad shames me. He's like, but the kids loved it, and just the look in their eye and this whole, whatever. But finally I said, Tim, what did that trip cost you? And he's like, oh, we dropped had to be like $10,000. I was like, $10,000 for, 4 days in Disney World. So let's say Tim tells me this story, and Tim gets home and says, you know what? I just spent $10,000 at Disney World, and I wasn't alone in the park. So that means a lot of other families are spending $10,000 in Disney World. I think I just want to buy some shares of Disney stock. And Tim goes and says, you know what? I want to invest in Disney. I want to put money in Disney because apparently Disney's making money. And if I put money in Disney, I will make money as well. So Tim has 2 options. He could buy stock in the Disney Corporation. And in doing that, he then has an equity or a vested interest in the Disney Corporation, which means that if Disney goes up because the new Avengers movie makes $10 billion, Tim's shares or his investment will go up. If Disney drops because maybe, I don't know, a pandemic happens and people stop going to the park, then Disney shares will go down and his investment will go down. That's really it. It's just when you have stocks, they're also called equities because you have a vested interest. You have equity in the company. You buy 1 share, you have a very tiny piece of the Disney Corporation. The second option is to sell or offer bonds. Bonds are also called debt. Debt is you're essentially lending the company money. So with a stock, Tim wants the price of Disney stock to go up. With a bond, he's lending the company money to do whatever they want. It benefits the company because they don't give up equity, right? And it benefits Tim because he receives interest on that debt, right? It's like if you lend a buddy $10 and you say, here's $10, but next week I want 15, right? You're doing the same thing just with major corporations. Could be Disney, could be the US government, could be anybody, but you're essentially lending them money and collecting interest. With a bond, you don't care how Disney performs. You don't care if the Avengers makes 10 billion, you don't care if a pandemic happens. All you care about is that Disney is financially sound enough to pay you back your interest, right? That's really it. So whether you have stock in the company, right, you own a piece, or you have you're lending the company money and they're paying you interest. Those are really the two ways to benefit. Stocks historically have generally outperformed bonds because bonds are a lot less aggressive, risky. As you'd imagine, so not to get too into the weeds on it, but as you'd imagine, a bond, if I offer bonds to Disney, they're probably going to pay me way less interest on that than if I was to offer a bond or loan money to, let's say, someone on this call, a small business owner, right? Because there's way more risk. So if Disney's going to pay me 5% and someone opening a restaurant right in town says, you know what, I need you to lend me money, I'll pay you 5%. If I have that option to go to Disney or I have the option to go to XYZ restaurant, I'm going to go to Disney for the same amount, right? So the risk gets there where people say, well, if I'm going to lend money to you, it's going to have to be at 10, 15% because Disney will give me 5. So, you have the two there. So that's kind of where the risk comes in. Okay. So that's essentially at the base level, the difference between a stock and a bond. Stock, you own something. Bond, you're just collecting interest. Okay. So that's interesting, but what is a mutual fund? So mutual funds work a little bit differently. A mutual fund is a giant basket of individual stocks, right? So let's say Tim comes back and Tim says, I want to buy Disney, but when you own Disney, you want Disney to go up, you want Disney to keep making money, but you don't have a vested interest in Verizon, you don't have a vested interest in Facebook. There's basically just one company. So you get what's called single stock risk. And this happens a lot with people that work for publicly traded companies, where they work for a while, they start to get some shares. They work for longer, they get more shares and more shares and more shares. And any of the accountants on the phone will know when you start to deal with restricted stock, it gets very complex. But people have single stock risk where, let's say you work for Disney for a long time. I know people at Verizon have a significant stock package, and it's great. The company's done well. It pays strong dividends. However, what if all of a sudden something happens, right? If back to our example before, pandemic happens and Jane Smith has worked for Disney for 20 years and has most of her assets tied up in that stock, the stock tanks, and it all of a sudden overnight you see your net worth drop by a significant margin. So what was created was the mutual fund. So the mutual fund allows investors, no matter how big or small, to have access to many, many, many different kinds of stocks under one roof, right? So let's say I wanted to invest in not only Disney, but a lot of different big companies. I would buy a mutual fund that essentially holds many. And this is just, an example of some of the positions that are on the S&P 500. But when you hold a mutual fund now, you have access to all these companies, right? So Disney skyrocketing because Avengers was amazing won't really move the needle that much, right? But at the same time, if it tanks, you're not going to lose your shirt. So, and the reason being, Disney might not do that well, right? But maybe Home Depot takes off because of all the do-it-yourself projects during the pandemic, or Verizon, or Colgate, all these big names that are under one roof. So when you buy a mutual fund, you're buying essentially into sometimes 2,000 to 3,000 individual stocks. So an average investor could say, okay, well, I am going to give you $100, and that $100 can actually buy thousands of individual stocks under one roof, right? And then once you have that goes off in all different paths, right? You can have large cap mutual funds, which are most of the stuff that's on this list, right? If you want to get more aggressive, you can buy mutual funds made up of small companies. Mutual funds made up of, they've gotten specific where just financial companies, you name it, but it's allowed people to, and especially average investors, to be very well diversified under one roof, right? With as little as, $100 investment. And I would also ask that if there's any questions, feel free to just shout them out, or just hit the chat box, which I can't see, but Tara can jump in. I'm sure it'll pop up on my screen somewhere.
I'll keep my eyes peeled. No, don't worry about the chat. I'll keep my eyes peeled.
Okay, thank you. So makes it a little more conversational, a little more fun. So if this stuff if I'm speaking too fast, I'm a New Yorker that had a little bit too much Starbucks this morning, just feel free to say, wait, repeat that or whatever. Okay, so I get a lot of times people say, well, why would I use a financial advisor? I tell basically everyone that I talk to, most of my clients for the most part, but pretty much everyone I'll say on a call, I'm like, people are smart enough that I deal with, right? Most of my clients have done pretty well and have had some experience in the financial markets. They're smart enough to do it themselves. I think the biggest role that a financial advisor plays or should play is that it takes emotion out of the equation for some people, right? People act on emotion. So if I met someone and they said, look, just send me one graph or one chart of why I should use a financial advisor or why people have typically use them, I'll usually send along this or put it up. And this just shows where the market's been for the last 20 years or so. Really simple graph. What it shows is that people have generally bought when the market was high and sold on the way down. Bought when the market was high, sold on the way down, right? Which is obviously the opposite of what you should be doing. But people act on emotion, they freak out, they panic. I easily had 15 to 20 people that I worked with during the financial crisis in 2008 that when the market was at 6,500 would say, I'm not getting back in until it hits 10,000, right? Which literally means I'm waiting for the market to go up 50% before I get back in. Okay, so someone with $50,000 that's just sitting in cash that knows it's going to go back in the market said, I'm waiting for my 50,000 would have become 75 and then I'll get back in, right? It's crazy to think about in retrospect, but at the time people were panicked, people were freaking out. This is actually the only time since I've been doing this, which basically, so I started in 2002, so it was right around here is when I started. First training class for my company after September 11th. It was, pretty crazy time in the markets. And just everyone was, no one knew what end was up. Everyone was pretty nervous, as they should have been, because it was a crazy time. But it was the clients that said, you know what, I'm just going to keep doing whatever my plan is. I'm going to stick to the strategy, whether it be, $50 a month or $5,000 a month. I'm going to keep plugging my money into the market because I know it'll turn around at some point. And as I was starting to say before, this is the first time since then where the market has dropped suddenly, but people are actually looking to keep pumping money into it. So who knows what tomorrow is going to bring? I think that this time period has really exposed a lot of people for being overly aggressive, because when the market's up, people keep buying, right? Look at this financial crisis. All of a sudden the market goes up and people are buying like crazy now that the market's up, right? But who knows in the situation we're in, what tomorrow will bring. All the stimulus, right? No one's really talking about the $3 trillion of debt that's been added to, to the economy. There's a lot of people getting a little too aggressive with underestimating the pandemic. So the numbers could spike and the market could drop tomorrow. But the key is that if we look at it from the bottom, which was in March, we're up about 40%, right, from March. So, the clients of mine, I think that really stayed the course, are in a much better place. But again, people are panicking. So I showed this graph to say that when you actually break this down, it was clients that didn't have an advisor that were the ones that just make a rash decision, go online and say, all right, sell everything. The whole world's ending. Let's sell everything, right? But the clients of mine, if I have probably 150 to 200 clients, I only had 2 people that actually went to cash out of that. And it was, it was a mistake. I told them it was a mistake, but I think there were many others that I'm sure would have if they didn't have that phone call to make to say, hey, I want to go to cash and have someone like myself, or, there's tons of very talented advisors, but someone like myself to say, okay, well, sleep on it. Let's get on the phone. Let's get on the phone tomorrow. Let's just talk through it, right? And just being able to talk and say, well, in some cases, which sounds absurd, to say, look, well, you're 32. This is an IRA. So, you can't even touch this money for 30 years. So maybe we just stick it out, see where it goes. So I think that's really important, just to kind of take emotion out of the equation a little bit.
Hey, John.
Yes.
First of all, I hear you in saying, your job is kind of to talk people off of a ledge a little bit, which really resonates with me. And you're right, like the emotions really run hot, especially in times like this. So I just wanted to chime in and say that. And then Mark Garvey is curious as to whether you're going to be talking about exchange traded funds.
I am, Mark.
Oh, great!
You brought that up. That's what we'll get into right now. This is the slide. Well, thank you very much.
Yes. All right. Cool.
And like your business with exchange traded funds, we are sealing in the savings. So this is just a quick graph, right, of where the market's been. So, and I show this for a few reasons, mainly three. So I show this for three reasons. One, there's no rhyme or reason or pattern to the markets, right? No, you can't look at this and say, okay, well, I know based on this, what probably will be the best or worst next year. The market's going to do what it's going to do. The second thing is that a diversified portfolio, which is the black, has always run right through the middle, right? And this doesn't mean necessarily a diversified portfolio of index funds, mutual funds, stocks, right? Just a diversified portfolio has always run right through the middle. So if you imagine your financial picture is a triangle, right? We always want the base to be enough cash that we can live for 3 to 6 months, whether it be a pandemic, someone loses a job, someone just says, you know what, I can't do this job anymore and I just want to go whatever, need a new car, right? You just want to make sure you have enough money that we don't have to go on credit cards and we could survive, right? Then you want a diversified portfolio. And a diversified portfolio is going to be, I look at it like the singles and doubles, right? We're just chugging along. And then lastly, speculation, right? So the tip of that triangle, we want it to be speculation, and speculation could be anything. It could be, I read about this stock that I want to buy, or my buddy's opening a restaurant, needs $10,000 to invest, or I came across this cool business. Whatever it is, we want to make sure we're going in the right order, so that way we don't say, well, I came across this really cool opportunity, I'm going to go heavy in it, not have enough money in cash. All of a sudden, that opportunity goes bust, and we're like, oh shoot, we're screwed, and the car just broke down, and there's a leak in the ceiling. So want to make sure we're in that order. And that's where an advisor too will make sure that the ratios are right. Lastly is that when we're actively rebalancing, right, we want to make sure that everything is in line with your goals and objectives. So let's say we look at your pie chart, and your pie chart says 15% of your money should be in international exposure, right? If international, which is the red, does really well, right? 2, 3, 4 years in a row, more than likely that 15% is going to look like 25%, right? Of the whole picture, 25%. So all of a sudden, if international drops 40%, we just give back all the money we just made. So when we put together portfolios, we want everything to rebalance, so that if that 15% becomes 20, we're going to go back to 15, sell off some of those gains, and buy some lower performing asset classes, so that when they pick up, right? Let's say in this example, we sell off some stuff, we buy some low performing asset classes like commodities, and that way if commodities shoots through the roof, right, well, cool, we just made some money, and then we're going to sell off some of those gains and buy some low performing things, right, that might perform, right? There's so many different situations if you look through this chart where something went from best to worst to best, right? Real estate, worst, best, right? So there's a lot of different opportunities there. And as Mark brought up, we have stocks, we have mutual funds. The downside to a mutual fund, right? There's some pros. Every financial product has pros and cons, every single one. The downside to mutual funds is that generally there's someone at the very top managing all of them, deciding what gets purchased and what gets sold. And that person makes an absurd amount of money, right? Millions of dollars a year. And they make millions of dollars a year to get basically pick different stocks and within a certain region, right? If you're managing a large cap mutual fund, you're picking individual stocks. They make millions of dollars a year, and a lot of that money comes from the investor that doesn't realize that they're paying it, because you say, sometimes an advisor says, well, your cost is, you pay whatever the commission is up front, and they say, all right, well, I can stomach that. I pay my commission, I move on. I don't charge commissions, by the way. It's just a general flat fee, whatever. But the client says, I'll pay my commission, I'll pay my flat fee, whatever. But they don't realize that there's also a hidden 1 to sometimes 3% per year that they're paying to this person to just do the whole manage the money. For that reason, index funds or exchange traded funds became a thing, probably became big about 5 years ago. And what an exchange traded fund basically is you're buying into an index. So the S&P 500 is an index. The Dow Jones is an index. MSCI, right? Broad market index. There are all these indexes. So if we look at the S&P 500, of that, you have your financial stocks. You can buy a financial index. You can buy all these different indexes. And the benefit simply is that there's way less turnover of the individual stocks. And because there's less turnover, there's less cost. So, I look at an index fund almost like a much lower cost alternative to a mutual fund. I think when the market does turn down, if it is more of a longer term thing, not during the pandemic, but during downtimes, that we'll see if the index funds will maintain. The mutual fund guys, as you'd imagine, are still saying, well, in a down market, mutual funds will outperform because they're more active. But historically, the index funds have done great. And not to say that that's a predictor of future, but generally, most of my clients are purchasing index funds in those accounts because, as you can see here, I can't control the market, and I don't really know where the market's going to go. I think anyone that does is just lying to you to try to get business. But if I can control the costs, and I can take a client that's paying 3%, they don't realize they're paying 3%, but they're paying 3%, and I can get it down to 1 to 1.25. I can increase their rate of return, right? Penny saved is a penny earned. And when you extrapolate that over a long period of time in the compound, it becomes could be a significant amount of money, especially for younger people or people that say, I have another 10, 20 years till retirement. If I could save an extra $1,500 to $2,000 a year, right? Times that by 15, 20 years with interest, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. I hope that answered your question. If it didn't, hit the chat box or just, you know how to find me. Right? And then if there's any other questions about this stuff, please hop in. My next thing that I wanted to go through, and possibly last thing I want to spend some time on, is just how taxes play into this whole thing. So, I think of Uncle Sam as the business partner that you never knew you had, and you never wanted. But taxes are really one of the biggest things in your financial picture. So sometimes simply just shifting things around from one product or wrapper to another is a way to just benefit you in the long term, but also save a ton of money in taxes, right? I think of it like when people bring up taxes and different ways that simply there's no way to beat taxes. They're going to get you somewhere. You're either going to pay it up front or you're going to pay it down the road, right? And you decide how that is. There's a lot of really talented tax professionals that will point you in the right direction. So it's important to speak with one of them or many in your life, but it's always important. I think it's one of the most important people to have in your corner, just a great tax advisor. But when we look at this, there's three main breaks that the government gives you. You either have money that is tax deferred, meaning you don't pay for it along the way. Tax deductible, right? So start with tax deductible, meaning you take a tax break today when the money goes in, right? I give you $1,000. I put $1,000 into a plan. I get a tax deduction immediately. $3,000-4,000 of tax time. That's tax deductible. Money grows tax deferred, right? Where every year as you grow money, you're not paying taxes until you actually take the money out. And lastly is tax-free distribution, right? Meaning that when you take it out, all the gains are tax-free. So you take a tax deduction, tax-deferred growth, tax-free distribution are the three potentials, but you only get two of them. You can only get two. So when we look at different situations, we'll start with the tax deferred, right? Tax deductible. So pre-tax, which is tax deductible, are all the traditional retirement plans. So a traditional retirement plan, a 401k and an IRA, right? There's some variations, 403Bs and things like that, but generally a 401k and an IRA, tax deductible, right? Which is great. So everyone, and especially newer people, you get a job, parents say, well, did you get a 401k plan, right? Put as much as you can into it, which is great, right? It's good today. But you just have to be aware that that money that goes in today will grow tax deferred. But remember, you only get two. So it's tax deductible today. Money grows tax deferred. But when you take it out, the full amount is taxable to you, right? So let's use real numbers. There's a very simple math equation called the rule of 72, right? Very simple. And the rule of 72 just says, if you take any number representing a rate of return and you divide that into 72, right? 72 divided by that rate of return. That's how long it takes your money to double. So let's just say we have a 40-year-old, and the 40-year-old can get, I don't know, let's use round number, 7% on their money, right? Which means that based on that, their money will double every 10 years. So if you're putting money into a plan, you put 10,000 in today, right? So that 10,000 into a 401k, you're going to get a tax return of, I don't know, let's say $3,000. So you save $3,000 today. Now that 10,000 will double twice over the next 20 years, right? Based on our simple math, it will double twice. So that 10,000 will become 20, and then it'll become 40. And then when we take that 40 out, we're paying tax on the full amount of money, assuming we take the full amount, the full 40 out, right? So now we take the full 40 out. Let's say we're in the same tax bracket, 30%. So we save 3 today, but when we take the money out, we're paying 12 in taxes, right? So while we had great tax deferred growth, we're still going to get whacked when we take the money out. And the younger somebody is, or the longer their working years, I should say, the bigger that gap becomes, right? So it's great to get the deduction today. I think 401ks are amazing because it's a forced savings. I think people just generally are terrible at saving their own money. So you look at it and say, well, you know what? It's money that comes right out of my paycheck, or I contribute to a SEP at the end of the year, whatever the case may be. It's off. I don't look at it. Awesome, great. But as long as you're aware of how that works. The second way, if we flip that, is a Roth IRA. And now a lot of companies, for those that are on the call that work for companies that offer a Roth 401k, it works the opposite. We don't take the deduction today, right? So let's say in the example from before, we don't take that $3,000 deduction, right? We put the money in, that money grows, right? Our 10 turns to 40. That whole 40 is fully tax-free whenever we take it out. So it really just depends. Like I said before, they're going to whack you one way or the other. Either they whack you up front or they whack you on the back end. But you're going to get hit with tax somewhere. There's no way to beat that. There's also some other options, right? Municipal bonds offer some tax breaks to some extent. There's some insurance-based products that offer tax breaks. But generally, when we talk about these two options, it's your 401k versus a Roth IRA. And a Roth IRA, there are ways to do it, but for people that make a significant amount of money, a lot of times you're phased out. So you have to find some tricky ways around that to get money into it. It's often possible. I do it for a lot of people, but there's some ways around that. So those are really the two main ones as we talk about retirement plans. Also, college savings plans would fall into this bucket as well. All right. So college plans, for those on the call that have young ones, 529 plans, in my opinion, are incredible vehicles to save for college. Doesn't matter really. Every state's different. So for those New Yorkers that are on the line, in New York, I personally feel that in my opinion, 529s are a no-brainer. And the reason is that in New York State, you get a state tax deduction for money that goes in. So 529s will grow your money tax-free and allow you to take it out tax-free if it's used for college. So there's some specifics on that too. People say, what if my kid gets a scholarship but just doesn't go to college, or there's college reform, or tuition reform, who knows? But the money's not out the window. I could elaborate on that further, offline, but the money's definitely not out the window. It just has to. The money is geared towards college, not out the window if the kids don't go. There's a lot of different ways around that. But in New York State, you get a state tax deduction for up to $10,000 of contributions. In Massachusetts, 2,000. I believe it's 2,000. It's a lot smaller. But still, either way, I think they're great for people because, again, people are terrible at saving their own money. So when you have money in a separate plan geared for a specific reason, oftentimes it's an easier way for people to say, okay, well, I'm putting that money away, no matter what it is. I could run calculators all day long for college. And usually when I run them, people say, well, I really want to see a calculator. What's it going to cost? And I tell them it doesn't matter. Just if you're saving some money, just put it towards the plan. And if they're insistent, I run it and it freaks them out. And it shows that someone with a couple, I have a client that I'm speaking to right after this call that went to Georgetown. He said, what's it going to cost for my 2 kids through Georgetown in today's dollars? And I was like, well, let's just set up a savings plan. He's like, well, I want to know what it's going to cost. I said, all right, fine. And it's going to cost $1.15 million in today's dollars to put, assuming that the college inflation stays the same, to put his kids through Georgetown. So it's like, you need to save $4,000 a month. And then we're back to where we started. Cool. Let's just start with a few $100 because that's what you can afford. And then we'll go from there. Right. So that's important. And then the third type of plan is just a standard brokerage account. Right. So we went through the pros and cons of these. It's a standard taxable account, whether it be brokerage, which means it's not for a specific purpose, right? Just a standard investment account. Could be your savings account, money market account, stock account, mutual funds. The benefit is that you have the ability to access the money at any time. There's no tax breaks. Put money in today, take it out tomorrow. It's fully liquid. Funds, one of the reasons you want to talk to somebody is that we have certain timelines. So if money is held for more than 12 months, there's a much lower tax burden. So an advisor will be able to provide that information and say, well, look, if you were to, I've had clients that sold out of a position, made a ton of money, and realized that if they just waited, this in one case actually 60 days, because he didn't have a good tax advisor, if he waited just 60 days, he would have saved a tremendous amount of money, because then it would be considered a long-term capital gain as opposed to a short-term. Because short-term, if it's less than 12 months, you pay your income bracket. More than that, generally just a flat 20%. So it worked out well selfishly for me, because the client said, you know what, my other guy's an idiot and I need to talk to someone else. And, so it worked out. He's a good client. But oftentimes having an advisor that can steer you in the right direction for certain stock, this is a company stock situation. He had tons of it, different conversation. But in these plans, the benefit is that it's fully liquid, no taxes or penalties, only on the gains when you pull the money out. The downside is, like I said, all the gains you're taxed as you go. So if you have money, for those of you that have money in money market accounts, every year you get a tax bill, you get a 1099, right? Whether it's $100 or thousands of dollars, they're going to say you made this much in interest and this is what you owe in tax, right? Just the way it is, because the gains are gains and interest is taxed in the same year, right? If you own stocks, the end of the year, here's how much you made in dividends. Pay tax on those dividends, whether it's reinvested or not, pay tax on the dividends. So if there's any questions on that, I know it could be a little confusing, but when I work with clients, it's really just making sure that they're well diversified in all three, because we want to make sure we have enough geared for certain reasons, college plans, retirement plans, but at the same time, liquidity is very important because things pop up. And there are some certain things going on right now where you get breaks if you took money out of your retirement plans, but I definitely wouldn't recommend that unless we're in an absolute pinch, and we wouldn't want to be in a pinch if we set it up from the right way from the start. So I think that's really important when doing that. This one right here, the post-tax bucket, the tax-free money, is not as easy, but a lot of advisors can help you out with that and think of some different strategies to get money there. All right. So if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them as best I can.
Any questions, guys? I'm here to field those questions. I'm just going to check Facebook really quick. I have a quick question. It's pretty general, John. When potential clients get in contact with you, what are they usually looking for? What are some of the main questions that people bring to you, or pain points that they bring that you have to address?
I think a lot of the people, especially now, I think this situation has made people realize, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing. Either I don't know what I'm doing, or I don't want to deal with this stuff. So sometimes it's just to say, help me simplify my life a little bit, right? It's the topic of this talk. But I just want to simplify my life a little bit. I want someone that I can offload this stuff to, and I could simply reach out every few months with a question, or know that we're gonna get on a call every 3 to 6 months. I think that the value that I started to think about this recently. When I got married in a church, and so you have to go through all these classes to get married. And I really didn't like it. It was a nightmare. But you had to do it. It was just part of the thing, apparently. Who knows? But
I wouldn't know.
But during whatever, it was
a Catholic thing?
But during the process, there's a time when they take everybody and they say, okay, everyone go to your separate corners, and just you and your spouse, and I want you to only talk about whatever, right? All different topics. So it was, I want you to only talk about, how many kids you want to have. I want to only talk about, whatever, all different things. But one of them was finances. And what I find that most couples do is they have their finances, and it's like this monster under the bed. No one wants to talk about it. So it's either a passive aggressive comment in the kitchen because, and more Amazon boxes today, or do you look at your money and you say, oh my God, there's never constructive conversations. So I think one of the ways that I help people the most is just being able to say, okay, well, twice a year or quarterly, whatever it is, based on the situation, we're going to sit down, we're going to only talk about your finances, and then you guys don't have to think about it for the next 3 to 6 months, and we'll reconvene and see how we're doing. But it's just a way to have that kind of impartial person to come in and be like, you know what, you're screwing up in certain areas, or you committed to cutting back in this and you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of guys that are like, you got to tell my wife to save more money. I'm like, well, that's not, that's just, it's ridiculous to think that we're going to dramatically change like people's patterns, but it's more just finding out, what are you trying to accomplish? And let's figure out a way to get there. Yeah. And then just check in and say, well, you said you could do this and you're not doing it. But I think mostly it's a way to have a more formal, like, we're talking about this, like a business meeting, right? At work, we have business meetings every 3 months. We're like, all right, here's our quarterly strategy, but we don't do that for our personal finances. So I look at it like that.
Yeah. And I think having that just built in, and someone holding you accountable in a neutral, coming from a place of neutrality, right? Especially in relationships, married people. It's a hard thing to talk about. And I can certainly speak for myself in that and I've told you this before, John, I have a lot of like associations with money, meaning like whatever it is I'm bringing in is a direct relation to how I am, like my value as a human, which is completely messed up. It doesn't make any sense. But there is a lot of this emotional garbage that you bring to the table, and your person isn't always the best person to be talking to about those things. It's good to have someone else in the mix. There are a couple questions coming in from Triss. She says, how do you invest for safe growth if you had a sudden illness before retirement and can never work again, and income now is now 1/5 of what it was?
So meaning how do you invest your existing money for safe growth? If I'm understanding the question right, it is, what should I do with my current money so that I don't risk losing it because my income has dropped significantly? I think that's the question.
Yep. Trish says yes.
Okay, great. I would say, thanks, Trish. I would say you want to make sure that you have someone, a professional, look at your allocation, how the money is allocated in the first place. So it's kind of a loaded question. We want to make sure that the money is allocated the right way. So you should be invested pretty conservatively right now, but then doing an income projection and figuring out, all right, well, what is it that you need to live on? Because there are certain products that can guarantee income for the rest of your life, but there's always pros and cons to everything, like I said. So I think it's just having someone take a look at your portfolio and how your money's allocated. And then from there, figuring out, all right, what do things look like in the future? And maybe working on a budget as well, seeing what maybe some areas you can cut expenses down. And there's a lot of questions, additional questions I would have. But first is it 1/5 permanently, or is it 1/5 for the next 6 months or a year? And then from there, let's talk about what you currently have going on and what we could do to kind of alleviate some of your concerns moving forward.
I have some additional information. So she says, my 401k is invested in ETFs right now, and about 1/6 cash. And
what was that?
1/6 of it is cash.
Okay.
And then she said she has a 401k and working with Morgan Stanley Private Wealth.
Okay. I would say 20%, 1/5 in cash. I don't know what the fixed income portion is, but if it's 80% is in equities in the market, that's probably too aggressive considering you're nervous about running out of money. Who knows? Again, who knows where the market will go tomorrow? But based on age, I would speak with, if you're looking for someone for a second opinion, take a look at it. I think it's probably best just to have someone else look at your portfolio, or just make sure your advisors are aware of your situation and your concerns, and that running out of money is a significant one, because they should totally, if this is something that happened recently from an illness, I'm sorry to hear it, by the way, but if it's something that happened from an illness, you want to make sure that the whole financial picture is kind of rejiggered, and there should be some kind of, hopefully there was some kind of insurance that they put in place for you to protect against this. And,
well, John, can you hear me?
Oh,
I can, yes.
Oh, cool. I just noticed that there was a mic on.
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
That's okay. Well, yeah, what happened with me is I did everything that I thought was right before this all happened. And I did have disability insurance through my employer, but I have since learned that disability insurances like to not pay you, and they'll fight you.
Yeah.
So I'm in a struggle with, if that had worked out, that'd be great. So since I'm not getting that income from the insurance, that was a real devastating blow. And even though I had the best plan laid, it didn't work out. So the challenge that I have now is I've got a nice 6-figure 401k. It's a little over 5. And, my concern is that I'm only 59, but this illness is not that terrific statistically. But I would like to be able to fill my gap that I have every month. And I guess, the ETFs, I understand a little bit that those are traded constantly all day long. So the risk is a little less, and there's no fees for me because of the way the account's set up. So I'm very new at all this stuff. So I guess with the way that they're investing it, they felt that the ETFs were kind of conservative in some ways, and I asked them to put stops on them as well, which seems to be working. I mean, how do you feel about, lack of a better word, it's almost like using stops almost as a crystal ball to cover your tail if all of a sudden things tank like they did last Friday and last week.
Right.
Is that sort of not a good method, and it's probably better just to?
No, I think it's a good method. I would just be, I don't know. I think at this point, anything that you could do to just capture dividends. I think dividend stocks are going to be picking up a little bit, just from a value standpoint, because that'll lower your risk a little bit too. So I'm sure whatever they're doing is good as long as the allocation is right. But you might want to ask them for just some different ways that you can guarantee income for the rest of your life. So you don't have to worry about that. And I would also say that it's highly unlikely that they're managing a $500,000 portfolio for free. So you might just want to ask a little bit more about that and see what.
I'm fortunately luckily for me, I'm kind of under the blanket of my ex-husband's account, so they're kind of doing this as a nice gesture, if you will. So the fee that I do pay currently is extraordinarily practically nothing. So whenever something moves around, I'm not even getting charged for it. But I guess the question would be because I'm officially disabled, if I had to take money out of the IRA, I don't get the penalty. But of course, that money is going to be taxed because it's a traditional,
Right.
it was a traditional 401k. But I think my general question was, how can I maximize that money in investments? And if you had any ideas to maximize investments in a conservative situation.
Yeah, well, I would say so a couple things. One, if you're 59, at 59 and a half, there's no tax, there's no penalty anyway. So and even now, because of the the government just said that there's no 10% penalty. So during this whole crisis, so there's no penalty on it. But in terms of maximizing it, I would, there's so much more I would need to know about the situation. But I would say that one of the ways to maximize it would be, well, it's weird because you're saying, you want to maximize it, but we can't lose money. So
yeah, I know.
it's a situation like, honestly, there's some good products that have guaranteed growth with distributions, certain annuity products that might make sense just because of your, you have a guaranteed growth rate. And then when you do annuitize, you have guaranteed income for the rest of your life. So it's something you don't have to worry about. There's a lot of different options, but it's important to know that, how it's allocated, because if that 500 goes to 400 tomorrow, we're in a jam. So.
Thanks for popping in.
No, thanks for the question.
And I'm also going to share, and I think I did once in the chat, but I'll share it in the Alchemy group. John has a link for, it's a free consultation. Yeah, John?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to share John's contact info in case you want to reach out to him directly. And John, I have one additional question for you from the chat, and then we can wrap this up.
Sure.
Benjamin Klein, who we both know, has a question. He says, is there an app that consolidates all financial account numbers, passwords, etc. in one place? So if something happened to one spouse or the other, they might be able to access that information.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of different options. There's the one that I use personally is called eMoney. And why I love it is that it's only offered through financial advisors. People, financial advisors like myself, we pay a bunch for it. So it's a pretty comprehensive software. It integrates everything that you have in your financial life. So, I mean, you name it, any your 401k, your mortgage, your, and anything that you have, your IRAs and stuff. So what's great about it, Ben actually nailed why, like, the real reason people use it, I think, or why I tell people to use it, is that generally in a couple, the husband or wife manages the finances. And the other one is typically in the dark and they don't really know. They just trust their spouse to be doing whatever. So what I love about it is that I set it up for a husband and wife. They both have a login. So even the one that doesn't manage the money at any point can go on their phone and just with a couple clicks in an app, see where everything in their financial life is on a dashboard, and it updates daily. So, it's the market could go up or down. You see what your balance sheet is as of that day. It also, if you're working with an advisor, when I meet with my clients, I could pull up their balance sheet, and we don't have to, before this, we would have to start our conversations with, okay, what's in this account? What's in that account? The ones that I didn't manage, what's in your 401k? Now I can pull it up and we can get right into the conversation. Say, okay, well, I see your 401ks perform this way. So it makes it easier. And there are other options like the mint.com is one of them. But the downside, a lot of these free ones, it's just a way to gather your info to sell it. So you get all pop-ups and you get.
Yeah, they're grabbing your info with those. Yeah.
It's grabbing your info to sell it. So this way is the one that I offer, and a lot of other advisors. I think it's actually owned by Fidelity, but it's a great way to integrate everything. And then also it has a vault feature, so you can put your important documents in there, and it's super secure. So
that's awesome. I didn't know. Hello.
So But it's easy. You said you had another question, Tara?
I was just commenting on how great that is. And I think that my husband and I need to get in on that, actually, because I'm the one that's in the dark somewhat intentionally, and I need to not be in the dark. Yeah, he's not hiding things from me. I just don't want to know. And that's not a very healthy way to go about things.
No, I mean, it's probably obviously because I do this, but you know, I do a lot of it, and my wife is very successful. She does really well. She's super smart, but a lot of times it's just simply like, she'll reach out to me and be like, well, so I have a question, like how much do we have in whatever? Or she'll ask questions like, how do you not know this? Like just no interest. She's like, I trust that, you know, you'll let me know if we're in trouble or if we're running out of money or whatever. And, you know, whereas if she had it on her phone and she was bored, she'd probably just go on and be like, oh, let's see what our mortgage balance is. Right. So, it makes it a lot easier, and it's a way just to kind of, I just people look at it and they say, like, when I think of simplifying my financial life, I tell clients, I'm going to put all your stuff in this one place, and at least you know where everything is. So you can have 10 different 401ks, which in my opinion is a nightmare, and I help people consolidate them. But you can have 10 different 401ks. You look at the app and you're like, okay, well, here's my balance in my retirement accounts. And it's just, you know, it's just one.
Hey, Tris, did you know that we can see you?
Yes, I just discovered. I've never used this system before. I was like, well, let me try this.
Hello.
Yeah, that's great. Hello.
Nice to see you. No, that's great. It's nice to see another face pop in. So, Tris, did you have anything else you wanted to ask John?
No, it's been a very interesting talk. I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to rewatching it because there's a lot of things to.
There's a lot of, there's a lot of really good.
So this is my contact info right here, Trish, and anybody else that's on the call. I'm really easy to get a hold of. You could just, you could either email me here or text me. And this is my assistant, Cassie. She runs all my client service. So you can also reach out to her as well. And I think I was going to send a Calendly link. So if you want to chat, always happy to have a conversation, do a screen share, and looking forward to getting back to in-person meetings.
Awesome.
Do you mind my asking, where are you located in Massachusetts?
Concord.
Oh, great. Right near me. Perfect.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So I live on Elm Street in Concord, and right now I'm in, on what is it? Baker Avenue. Baker Avenue is my office.
Oh.
So,
I used to be at 200 Baker Avenue. Small world.
Oh, nice. I'm in 300 Baker Avenue.
Awesome.
And John is super responsive, and he's very available. In fact, I tell him he should not be available on the weekends, but I think somehow he is. I think that's questionable. We'll have to talk about that at a later date again, John.
Yeah, we'll
but super responsive, and he's a wealth of information. No pun intended. All right. Well, thank you, John, so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Incredible. I will have, this is going to be in the Facebook group, so you guys do have access to this. And that's it for today.
Cool.
That's it.
Thank you very much.
John, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to share all of your info in the Alchemy Business Accelerator group. And
awesome.
Yeah, we'll continue the conversation.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Great
Take care.
Everybody. Everyone on the line.
Bye.
Bye-bye.